What if I told you you could pay off your mortgage, retire well before your retirement age, and live life completely on your terms? Sounds like a dream, right? Well, it's not, because I've done part of it myself and I've followed today's guest to get there. Barney Whiter runs a super successful blog called The Escape Artist. He's the main advocate of the FIRE movement in the UK. It's all about spending smarter, earning smarter, and building passive income so you can say goodbye to the 9-to-5 grind forever. Barney is the go-to expert for people looking to escape the rat race and live life on their terms. He's helped countless people achieve financial independence through practical steps and smart financial strategies. Whether you're just starting out or looking for that final push to financial freedom, this is the conversation that will show you how to make it happen, step by step. Let's dive in. So Barney, we met probably a couple of years ago, didn't we? Introduced by a friend who'd gone down the FIRE journey themselves, sold their agency, put a lot of money into various investments, living off those investments, having the time of his life, retired very, very early. So I had to talk to you. So in our first coaching sessions that we went through, it was about like clearing the debt and looking at investing wisely. And I've got to say, it's made a huge impact on my life. And I never thought this would actually happen. But as a result of your advice, I completely paid off my mortgage. In fact, I paid off a number of mortgages from your advice. And I can't tell you how good that feels. And I don't think I would have ever got there. I would have just thought, well, that's the monthly outgoings on the mortgage. That's what I need to pay. And I would have gone from product to product to product for the rest of my life, paying the mortgage, because that's what you do. But now I've paid the mortgage off, I have so much more disposable income. It's silly. And where's that money going to go? It's going to go into investing. Now, people watching this are really going to be interested to find out, what on earth is this? And the people I've spoken to, like my sister's boyfriend's going, oh God, send me a video on FIRE. I've got to do this. I've got £40,000 just sitting in a savings account. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get to this point. So Barney, the expert in the UK on FIRE, how do you help people at that starting point get on that FIRE journey?
It depends on the person. But in the example you just gave, I mean, the first thing I would do to them is explain that £40,000 is a bit like an ice sculpture at a wedding. So, like a beautiful swan that's carved in ice, and there's a drip tray under it. And the reason there's a drip tray is because it's melting. So you cannot see it disappear in real time, but it is disappearing. It is melting, and the swan is disappearing. And that's how it is with cash in the bank. Inflation is melting that away, slowly, steadily, remorselessly, silently. And whilst that's going on, your dreams are dying and your financial freedom is getting no closer. So in that case, that guy would need to put that 40,000 to work, and they would need to make their money work for them, and that means investing in productive assets.
People have a little stockpile sitting there, and in fact, you're meant to have a stockpile sitting there, like 3 months worth of all your outgoings, just in case anything goes horribly wrong. Although I'd be tempted to put that all into investments, because the beauty of, say, investing in the stock exchange is that it's actually liquid money. And people don't really understand that the fact they can put it in, but they can get it straight back out again. So it's a savings plan that should stay there in a savings plan. But if you need it in an absolute emergency, then you can pull it out. Okay, right. So what I thought would be really, really useful, because the whole Crunch channel is all about making money your way. So we've got one side of things, as you've seen, on the accounting and tax, how to save money on tax, how to do the accounting right, how to not be stressed. And on the other side, it is how can you do what you want? How can you make money your way? And I think the biggest dream of almost everybody is passive income, isn't it? If you could create
Yeah.
a whole model that you could just
Yeah.
live off, wouldn't that be just
Yeah.
like genius?
Yeah. So a lot of your clients will be small business people, SMEs, self-employed people. And like, that's wonderful. It's great to work for yourself. In some ways, you've already like won the game. If you're working for a small business, a startup, if you're working for yourself, like if you're doing that and you're like making good living from it, that's fantastic. The problem is, like, that's hard work.
Yeah. Yes.
And so, running a small business is not passive income. It is hard work, and it's risky. Most startups go bust within the first couple of years. Small businesses can just be clobbered at any time by almost anything. COVID would be the sort of classic example of that, of a force majeure that's outside of your control. So
Yeah.
you can run the best little business in the world, but if the world conspires to shut that down for you, that's out of your control. So essentially, when I'm talking to people with small businesses, it's just kind of explaining that they need to like build the business, grow the business, and perhaps like an exit of that business will be a source of capital for them. Perhaps that will be their
Yeah.
pension or part of their pension, but you can't rely on that. And so essentially what you have to be doing is generating surplus cash flow and funneling that surplus cash flow into productive real assets, as we said earlier. So
Yeah.
what do I mean by productive real assets? I'm talking about the stock market. I'm talking about owning the biggest, safest, strongest, most profitable businesses in the world. I'm talking about owning Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Procter and Gamble, as well as like, older economy stuff like BP or Shell or Barclays, etc. Those can easily be owned through a passive investment vehicle. So that would be an example of investing in a productive, a real asset class that generates passive income and grows prodigiously over time. Now,
Yeah.
you can use other asset classes as well. We could talk about property. We could even talk about crypto. There's other, we could talk about private equity or venture capital. But for most people, like the stock market is just the easiest and one of the lowest risk ways to invest if you know what you're doing. And I kind of think for many people, it's the best game in town.
Yeah. Okay. So what I did last night is, because I'm thinking, like, to your point about small businesses and our clients. Yes, they're all small businesses, and funnily enough, they're freelancers, contractors, and small businesses that have longevity. I agree. If you're setting up a cafe and you hit COVID, then you're stuffed. But with the innate skills that these people have, whether it be programming or consultancy skills, they keep going. So our client base, we have clients from 10 years ago. And beyond. So they tend to stay, but there's many businesses that are very unpredictable. But what I did last night.
The point remains. The point remains that let's say you can work forever, and that's wonderful. That's fantastic, and I'm all for it. But no one's immortal. No one's invulnerable. People get sick. People get burnt out. People get tired. So why wouldn't you have a freedom fund, a safety net? Why wouldn't you have an amount of money that made like work optional if you could?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going to the way you invest and things, and this is so interesting, isn't it? You do this all day, every day, and help stacks of clients out. But I was trying for the first time, or maybe the first 5 times, explain to someone what FIRE was, and he said, "But I won't know what to invest in," and I went, "Yeah, but you invest in index funds. Index what?" It is because people don't know, and this is where the beauty of the fire system comes in, and what you can. I mean, you're not giving financial advice, you're giving the strategies to this. You're not telling them exactly which stock to go in or which index fund, but you're giving them a flavor of the areas to go. And those index funds are super safe because they're spreading everything. So I last night I wrote down all of the steps that I went through to get to where I'm at, and I'm nowhere near you. You do this; it's your living, which is fantastic. But all the steps I went through, and I broke down. I looked at some of the Vanguard index funds and what they had, what companies they had, and what percentages they had to give people an idea in this. And that's what we're trying to do in this YouTube channel is really explain and give some clarity. I mean, there's so much you and I can talk about, and the history and how you've come to doing this, but the practical, actionable steps to actually starting on the fire journey, I thought would be amazing from this. And then we can send them to the Escape Artist blog, which you've been writing for years, which is absolutely excellent. And I've got I can bring a screenshot in of that. So should we start at those steps, if that's all right, Barney? We give them those things, and then I can point out some of those index funds as well, and show them the components that are in there and why it's safer than just investing in single businesses. And I told you the story, and I did this myself when I was working in the city. I invested in a telecom firm I was working for, and it went down and down and down. It was the most horrendous time I've ever had, and I swore I'd never ever invest in the stock market ever again. Conversation with you and index funds and the way they spread the risk is a genius way, and I think people just don't know this. So let's get to the steps. How would you describe fire? What are the key basic steps that you would guide someone through?
Okay. So financial independence. So FIRE is financial independence, retire early. The retire early is optional. But essentially, there are 4 pillars of financial independence, 4 things that you need to do to get there. One is earn money, build a career, build a business, generate income.
Yeah.
Secondly, you need to spend less. So that means not frittering everything that you get on status goods, kind of flashy items, cars on finance, and et cetera, et cetera. We've all got our list of vices, right? Spending vices.
Yes, I certainly have.
Step 2 is spend less. And pay yourself first. So if you get paid, the kind of a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking, oh, I'll save what's left at the end of the month. Well, guess what? If you do that, there'll be nothing left at the end of the month, because we've got this amazing ability to kind of keep one eye on the current account as we go through the month and adjust our spending up or down as we do that. So, one of the things I suggest people do is pay themselves first, stash the money at the start of the month when they've just been paid, and put it out of harm's way, put it out of temptation's way, get it to work, get it working for you in the stock market, and then you live off the lower amount that's left in your current account for the rest of the month. So step 1, earn more. Step 2, spend less. Step 3 is invest the surplus wisely. And you just touched on the sort of preconceptions that a lot of people have, like, oh, the stock market's not for me. It's a scam. It's a casino. It's too complicated. It's too risky. I lost money in that before. And a lot of people have lost money, like dabbling, gambling, speculating. And generally it's because, they heard a tip from their mate down the pub. They read some sort of puff piece in the newspaper. They listened to some idiot on YouTube, and they ended up buying some sort of the latest hot tech stock that was like rumored to go to the moon. It didn't. It crashed and burned. they swore off the whole thing and kind of swore never to do it again. Like a lot of people did that 2000 to 2003 in the sort of dot-com crash back in the day. And I hope I'm not traumatizing you by mentioning that.
That was exactly the era.
And so people just often don't realize that there's this simple, easy thing called an index fund, which owns all of the big companies of an index, which could be a world index. So you could just own one fund that owns all of the big companies of the world, the biggest, strongest, safest companies in the world. And you buy and you hold it kind of, either forever or until you retire or until you want to, cash it in and buy a house or whatever you need to do to secure the lifestyle that you want. Because ultimately, like, money is a tool. It's a tool to help you get what you want in life. It's a tool to help you get the lifestyle that you want. And so one of the things I say to people is, like, when they're saying, "Oh, isn't it like super risky, or is it super complicated?" It is as easy to invest in the stock market through a low-cost index tracker fund as it is to open an online bank account with, Lloyd's or Barclays or whatever, and pay your gas bill. I mean, the mouse clicks involved are comparable. It's like fill in some fields, put your name, put your address, etc. It's that easy. So anyone that's capable of running an online bank account and paying their gas bill is capable of investing their own portfolio in the stock market. Now, obviously, it's not in anyone's interest to tell you that. It's certainly not in a wealth manager's interest to tell you that. It's not in most so-called independent financial advisors' interest to tell you that, because the financial services industry makes money from complexity. It makes money from people being baffled, bewildered, scared, and then sort of either reaching out for help or sort of getting bamboozled into buying, very expensive and complicated products which don't do the job. Hence a sort of history of mis-selling in the UK.
Yeah.
But it can be made if you can avoid all the noise and this, if you can avoid all the noise and the sort of unnecessary complexity. As I say, it's as easy to just invest in, a global tracker fund as it is to open a bank account. Can I just give you a numerical example of, like, how the maths works and how how powerful compound growth is? So if you imagine someone like a school leaver that leaves school at 18 and they save £15,000 between the age of 18 and 25. So £15,000 over 7 years, I think that's about £167 a month.
Okay.
So, like, doable. If they invested that in a global equities tracker fund, and they got a total return on that of 10% per annum, 10% per year, and then they just let it run, they just let it grow, they just let it compound between the age of 25 and 65, 40 years later, it would be worth just over £1 million at the age of 65. So
wow,
£15,000 grows, compounds, multiplies, turns into just over £1 million. And that's without saving another penny after the age of 25.
So that's amazing.
That's just compound interest doing the heavy lifting of, like, saving for your retirement. So, in that example, our hero is done by 25, essentially, in terms of saving, and that's all they need to do to achieve that result. Now, there is when we talk about safety and risk, there will be lots and lots of wobbles along the way. So the stock market does not deliver a beautiful, steady 10% per annum like a metronome year in, year out. What it does is it goes up in spurts and it goes down. and it's more of a sort of roller coaster ride. But over the long term, the returns that it has delivered over the last 100 years have been about 10% per year. And so if the future is anything like the past, that's a representative example that I gave. And 10% a year, 15,000 turning into to the £1 million. And so yes, like in any individual year, the stock market can have a bad year. People have heard of like Black Friday or whatever, Black Monday. There have been days when the stock market fell by 30% odd, but it always comes back. It always comes back. And if one day, it doesn't come back because, the aliens have landed and eaten us all, well, we won't be worried about money. We'll be worried about other things.
No, exactly. So there's something beautiful about this whole approach, in the fact that you've just got to hold back, haven't you, and just let the market do whatever it's doing. And I think the term is, was it dollar cost averaging?
Dollar
so
cost averaging,
you're putting the money in consistently, no matter what, every single month. Whenever you have some money, you put it in. Don't worry about it. Don't do what I did in circa 2000 and watch this telecom company go, ooh, like it's horrendous. Just stand back and let it do its thing, because that's proven every time to deliver by the end of the term that whatever term you set.
Yeah, so essentially, like dollar cost averaging, I talked about the roller coaster ride that the stock market gives you. Dollar cost averaging is a way to smooth out the roller coaster ride. So we can't control what the stock market does, but what we can control as investors is our own behaviors. So we can control our work, our businesses, how hard we work, how much we spend, how much we put into our compounding machine, as I sometimes call it. So that's what we can control. And if we do that every month and we pay ourselves first and we put the money into the compounding machine and let it grow and we leave it there, then that's how we give ourselves the best chance of success.
Got it. So just going back to your early steps, you talk about. Now, I've written down the steps from last night, and I put my point one was actually make a commitment to overhauling my finances and stop wasting money as well. I had to make that commitment after a chat with you. Like you've got to just try this. Do it. No matter what's happened in the past, this is a different approach. The strategy is a good one. So the budgeting side to stopping wasting money was absolutely hilarious. The household here, there was a card always sitting on Amazon, and all these boxes were coming. Mainly me. I love the tech gadgets, and with this mini YouTube studio in the guest bedroom is a damn good excuse to. I need another light. I need another this. I need another that. And all these Amazon boxes are flowing. So in this budgeting exercise, Barney, as you know, I killed everything. The credit card came off Amazon. The bank account was set up with all pockets. There was a pocket for football boots. I kid you not. There was a pocket for the family food. There's a pocket for everything. And Claire's going, my wife's going, what the hell's going on? So I showed her one of the Fire movies that you can get on Apple TV. And she goes, right, okay, I've got it. And I think that sounds really, really good. But can I have some more money for this? So the budgeting did really, really well. And I started seeing a lot more cash in my bank account, and it was going into the pocket called investing. So that's an exercise for all of you watching, is a really, really interesting exercise to go through. Like, look at all those subscriptions that you've got just knocking about. I think the gym's brilliant, but if you're not going and you're not going to go, cancel the damn thing. Cancel Sky, cancel these things, do more reading. It's, you see on the more extreme Fire, videos and explanations, they talk about frugal living. I think these are the super young people that want to retire in their 30s, and that some of that looks a little bit more extreme. And a lot of those people, Barney, don't even have cars, do they? Because there's a massive expenditure in cars. But I found that whole exercise really quite empowering to actually, for the first time, have a proper control of my money, not have jack diddly at the end of the month, have it all divided out, know things were going to be paid, know that I could pay for, the activities at school, the external activities, the chess club or whatever Hugo wanted to go to or Monty wanted to go to. But it felt very, very empowering. And then I'm putting that surplus cash into the investing pot. But after the initial thing was, let's get rid of the debt. So anybody running with credit cards, clear those things. Just keep chipping away at the mortgages. That conversation with you about, should I go out for this posh party or this nice meal? No, I'm going to put the 150 quid into the mortgage app, and I got a little bit OTT, as probably Darren Fell can, on things, and I was regularly going into my Santander app, and I was like chucking another 250 quid. I found another spare 300 quid, and I was clearing this thing, and it's actually worked. It's actually worked. Yeah. It's very similar to your story. I think I was absolutely going to kill this mortgage, and I did, and that's left me feeling really, really good. We've got the budgeting still going, but there's no mortgages, and that's amazing. That really is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's really how I got into this whole thing, was my parents got into a spot of bother with their mortgage.
Right.
Like back in the day, you'd be too young to remember this, Darren, but in 1981, interest rates went to 17%. And unfortunately, my parents had just bought the biggest house that they could possibly afford and borrowed as much money as they possibly could from the bank. And my dad worked in construction. Interest rates went to 17%. The construction industry, dried up. And suddenly, frugality was the flavor of the month in the Whiter household. So yeah, the newspaper got cancelled, the holiday got cancelled. My dad couldn't afford to buy beer, so he had to brew his own appalling sort of potion. And I took from that early experience that owing money to the bank, wasn't all it's cracked up to be, and it can turn around and bite you if you can't keep it up, and if interest rates go up and something happens to your income stream. So the message I took from that was that it kind of makes sense to clear your mortgage as soon as possible if you're in a position to do so. Now, we can have a debate about, should I pay off a mortgage if I'm, let's say you've got a mortgage that's 5 or 6% interest rate. Should I pay that off, or should I put it into the stock market and get maybe 10%? So there is an argument for, holding on to lower cost debt, cheap debt. If I could borrow at 1% and put that into the stock market at 10%, well, there's an argument for that, depending on my risk tolerance. But like you, when I was in my 20s and my sort of early 30s, I just kind of geeked out about the whole mortgage thing, and I just was obsessed with this idea that I could, clear my mortgage. And as soon as I've cleared my mortgage, well, I own my house. The bank can't take it off me. I can, if push comes to shove, I can live low cost. So from that point onwards, I'm de-risked, and life just should be, better. And I'm going to have more surplus cash flow from that point onwards. And by that point, I kind of okay, well, what's next? Well, I'll go harder on the investing.
Yeah.
But for me, paying off the mortgage was such a tangible, emotionally powerful goal that I was quite willing actually to, give up some trips to restaurants and some consumer crap for the sort of the little excitement of going into the branch and handing them some more of their money back.
Yeah. It was, you're right, and that was exactly where I was poised. Should I put more money into the stock exchange, into these index funds, or should I pay off the mortgage? And I was after that emotional, positive, and I've got this mantra that I'm working to. It's like, I've had a very complex life. I've got a fairly sizable, business with a lot of lovely team members and lots of other things, and a young family. Like, I'd like to make life a bit simpler.
Yes.
That's just a fundamental, like, nice thing. And yeah, paying off the mortgage, and I managed to actually clear down a buy-to-let as well. So that's like,
Yeah.
that's it. It's
Well,
it's
I'm a
all done.
huge believer in keep it simple, stupid. So
Yeah,
if you are if you're a professional, if you're self-employed, you've got your own business, your own gig, plus you've got a wife or a husband, plus you've got kids, plus you've got friends, plus you've got relationships, plus you've got hobbies, you know, you, headspace is the most scarce resource.
yeah,
You know, people just so often are just running around like headless chickens, just like going from one firefighting exercise to the next. And what what I'm all about is, why don't you stop stop just leaking money out of your life. Stop the spending that's just keeping up with the Joneses, or it's just kind of treating yourself for the fact that you're not very happy with your life, and just start spending mindfully, consciously, intentionally, and then set yourself up a simple sort of financial structure and a simple sort of investing plan that makes it all happen as simply as possible, and as much of it kind of runs on automatic pilot as possible.
yeah,
So, I sometimes say, like, a good portfolio or a good financial setup should pass the coma test, by which I mean, like, I should be able to slide into a coma for 6 months, and if I kind of wake wake from that after 6 months, everything should still be fine. Like, everything's, the electricity bill got paid on direct debit. I haven't been cut off. I'm still in my house, and and my index funds have just been growing and compounding, and earning me money 24/7, 365.
yeah. Yeah, it's yes, simpler feels better. It feels very free. So let's move on to asset classes now. And you mentioned that right at the beginning. So we've got the stock exchange with index funds is what we've mainly spoken about, and yeah, property can be an asset class, and that was another learning from you in terms of I always believed I kind of, like, at one stage of my life, I absolutely loved property, and I had to have more. What tended to happen is my little bachelor places, I didn't sell, rented them out, and then bought somewhere else. So I've had a few, and that was a really, really interesting conversation. And you might want to talk a bit about this, about, like, well, look, there's three buy-to-lets there. You've done quite well, but is that a really good, asset class to keep piling the money? Could it be better utilized? So that's exactly how I cleared the mortgage and changed everything here, from having, like, really not much money, spare at all, if not no money, to actually clearing everything by sensibly going, look, that property, really, do I need that much? And also, you're absolutely right when we spoke about it, it's that head bandwidth. They're ticking away, but they're not as simple as sticking money into an index fund. There is always something with the property. It's the boiler, redecoration, the lock's broken, or whatever it is. There's always continuous work, and the renewals of the tenancy agreements. So I made what I feel, for me, again, is a really bold decision, built on, I must have bricks and mortar. That will do me well in retirement. I'm going to sell that one, and I'm going to clear this down, and I'm going to invest faster. And that was interesting. So yeah, anything to say about, like, how to have that balance between stock market, other asset classes, and property?
Mm. Well, the issue is, everyone thinks they understand property because everyone knows what a house is and everyone's lived in a house. Um, most, a lot of people, most people haven't, um, owned a stock market investment or they haven't worked on the stock exchange. So there's just a natural familiarity that people have with property versus equities,
Yeah.
or the stock market. And so there's nothing wrong with being a property owner. There's nothing wrong with being a buy-to-let landlord, other than the hassle. It can absolutely be a good way to build and grow wealth. But the question is, people sometimes say things like, "Oh, yeah, I've got this little place. It lets out really well, and it washes its face, or it makes a nice
Yeah.
little profit." And I'm like, okay, yeah, but that's not good enough. Like, if that's a £250,000 flat or a £250,000 house, it should be earning an appropriate return on the capital tied up. So
Yeah. Yeah.
just making a profit is not enough. That's not the right test. The question is, what percentage return on capital are you getting from that property
Yeah.
versus what you could be getting with the best alternative use of the capital? And in most cases, the best alternative use of the capital is put it into the stock market, where you could get perhaps a 10% expected annual return without doing any boiler maintenance, without changing any light bulbs, without dealing with tenants that have had a party, without dealing with void periods, without dealing with floods and other sort of random events that seem to sort of
Yes,
plague
we've all had to
around
deal with this.
buy-to-let
Yeah.
landlords. There's always hassle with property, and people sort of think that property is safe because they can touch it and they can feel it. But I give the example of, like, again, what happened during COVID. The government, in its infinite wisdom, decides to lock down the economy, and it decides that if you're a landlord and your tenants aren't paying, you can't evict the tenants.
No.
So
No.
that's great for the tenants. But that's not so good if you're the mug buy-to-let landlord that is unable to access their property. And that happens. That's not just a COVID phenomenon. That happens more than you would think. I've got a coaching client right now who is having to go to court because they gave notice to the tenants legally and in accordance with the contract, and the tenants just decided not to go. And so you then have to go through an eviction process, which is long, complicated, expensive, painful, stressful, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
So
That's awful.
um,
Awful.
the
Yeah.
the
That'd be my worst nightmare.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
Mm.
The system does not have your back as a buy-to-let landlord. They have squeezed and squeezed and squeezed buy-to-let landlords over the years. Every year there's a new piece of legislation which tilts the rights further in favor of the tenant rather than the landlord. And
Yeah.
okay, maybe that's the right thing. I don't have a sort of strong view on that, but I know it's a nightmare for the landlord.
Yeah, no, it is, and it does seem to be carrying on going that way, especially with Labour coming in. So the advice would be to have that balance there. If you do want property, don't have too much of a balance, in bricks and mortar. It's great to have maybe one, maybe it's one, in London that your kids might be using when they go to university, maybe, and that's there's other motives too there. Maybe it's got potential big capital gains in terms of the property value, but yeah, not to put so much. And I had, like a far bigger balance of bricks and mortar in the portfolio I set up. Right, it's been fantastic advice. We've got a number of the steps. The asset class we didn't talk about, which we probably don't have time to talk about, is probably a fave of yours, is crypto. I know very little about it. With the Trump election, I know crypto did incredibly well. So well done to you, Barney, and all those people have invested heavily in crypto and stuck by it. But that's probably for another conversation. So just finishing up on this brilliant, step-by-step guide to fire. Have you got your favorite inspirational story for everybody out of all your coaching clients? Obviously, not mentioning names and complete details. Is there a real fave in there? Someone who's gone from nothing to really achieving all that they wanted by following the fire strategy?
Yeah, many people. I guess the guy I was just talking to him is on my mind, because I was talking to him earlier this morning. He about 6 months ago left London, and he has bought a house near Lake Como. I
Wow.
think it's Lake Como. So he's an
Yeah.
Italian by birth.
Right.
He came over to London. He worked in IT for one of the banks. He had like a sort of tough sort of day job, fixing a bank's computers,
Yeah.
and he had like a side hustle as well. And he just ground and ground for many years, like stashed the money into index funds. And this year, him and his young family, he's got a little, cute little boy. They've just moved back to Italy, which is kind of where he's from. And this kid is just going to, grow up, on the sort of shores of Lake Como, beautiful surroundings in Italy. And, to me, it's just like an amazing example of someone that's just made it work for them and been smart, intentional. And, they're essentially, they've got financial freedom, and they'll get to see their children grow up. They won't have to sort of be in the office or away on travel, away traveling,
Yeah.
or on at conferences when their kids are in those sort of years that you never get back. And
Yeah.
so, that to me, that's a success story. There are many others. Everyone's got a different idea of, but I think that's my point. Like, everyone's got a different idea of what success looks like. And if you've got a freedom fund and enough money where working is optional, then it's your choice. It's your vision. It's your dream. Like, you get to decide what success looks like.
That's so brilliant. Because of course it requires, if you want to go for it properly and go for fire, it's going to be hard work. You're going to have to
Yes.
budget. It's not going to be necessarily easy, but it depends on the time frame. If you elongate the time frame out a bit more, you can make it a little bit more palatable and a little bit more easy. But it all depends what you want. But what a beautiful dream to, Italian working hard in the city, and that's. You've worked in the city. I've worked in the city. It's nice when you're young, you can go to the pubs, every night afterwards. But it gets a real horrible grind, and it's so lovely to get out of there. And for that family getting out and buying a house next to Lake Como that wouldn't necessarily been that cheap, Barney. To be fair, being one of the premium, lake locations in Italy. What an amazing thing. And in my example right at the beginning with my mate who followed your advice and sold his agency and is effectively retired, and he coaches other CEOs now for a bit of fun, really, so he can keep his hand in and in business and see what's going on and genuinely help people. And he's really happy, and he likes gadgets just like me, so he's buying a few gadgets but still keeping it quite controlled. He's a little bit more controlled than I am. Endless success stories out there, and the stuff you'll see for everybody that's watching this, online, the US fire crews, really frugal living. They're retiring, they're starting really early. They're retiring in their 30s and traveling the world and just living off the money they're taking out. And these are all the areas, Barney, we haven't even been into, like, how to extract the money, which of course you would be paying tax on, the 4% rule. We don't have time for that. Maybe that's for another part too.
Always
but
happy
it's
to talk about that.
Fascinating thing, and I think I want to expose fire to a whole new set of people, to give them that choice to make. Yes, you can do your consulting, your programming, your freelancing, contracting, or set up your small business, but follow the principles and have this money and keep putting it aside. It is another little nest egg that will grow far faster. Well, certainly than being in a bank account, because that actually goes backwards. So anyway, Barney, thank you so much for all your time. And here's Barney's site, and that's literally where you start. That's the starting page for all the steps you go through. And what I've done, and what so many people do, is you go like, all of this is so interesting. I'm so intrigued. All the stuff you put out, Barney, is brilliant. Like, oh right, didn't think about that. I didn't think about that. Oh right. And then you go, yeah, but I need more. I need more. And then you take your membership, and you have access to another set of even more detailed articles, and you have unlimited time with you, which is proving clearly incredibly useful for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure. Always happy to come back and talk about, crypto, or talk about 4% rule, how to live off capital. Happy to talk about any of that anytime.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much, Barney. I think we'll probably do that, because I think this might get a bit of interest. We've been putting a number of your articles up on the crunch.co.uk site. But yeah, there's going to be like, well, yeah, so what's the next step after the steps we've guided us through today? So we'll do that. So thanks again, Barney, and I'll see you soon.